Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 20th of June, comes to you from London. And quite a lot of moves in the market this morning, with the Federal Reserve hinting to lower interest rates. That's had a really big effect on the dollar over the last 24 hours, and we've seen the dollar turn bearish with downside targets. Medium and long term, we're still bullish on the dollar index, but that has just changed the sentiment somewhat. And if we look at the euro, as a result of that, the euro is now rising against the dollar, unwinding some of these downside targets. Still not bullish on the medium and long term charts, but short term starting to look a lot better against the dollar. Looking at the dollar yen chart, we see here again the dollar falling against the yen, so significant. And just dollar weakness, very much the theme. Sterling rising from about 125 to 127 against the dollar, so we're seeing that climb over the last 24 hours for sterling. Still bearish in the medium and long term charts, but quite key there. And against the euro, sterling actually looking stronger as well, and against the Swiss franc sitting at $1.26. Bitcoin is but sitting quite steadily above the $9,000 level, sitting about $9,300, holding on to last week's gains. We're just sideways the last few days, but it is all about upside targets for Bitcoin now, and it's looking stronger all the time. The US stock market was up slightly last night, and we see the S&P rising there. The market's obviously liking the news from the Fed. The Nasdaq higher, and the Dow also pushing higher, so they're quite significant there. And the Russell 2000 index struggling to make new highs after the last year's high, starting to look a little bit better. Bullish on all three time frames now on the Ichimoku chart, but we still have a little bit of work to do on the point and figure chart. The futures today, we've got the S&P future up 0.6% and the Nasdaq E-mini up 1%. So markets are set to rise even higher. The UK market is up this morning about 0.4%, so looking pretty strong there. Heading back into bullish long-term territory, so the market just really liking that news from the Fed last night, and also the mid-caps also looking better as well. The DAX is up just under 1% this morning in Germany, so looking strong there, and the CAC 40 is up 2/3%, also looking strong. Not far to go for the CAC 40 really to make a new all-time high, so that's quite significant. Japan also looking stronger, up 1/3% overnight, and the Hang Seng up 1%, so Hong Kong getting past its woes. And if we look at the Chinese market, it was up 2.4%, surging there, so looking stronger and recovering. Quite interesting if we can see China get above that recent 2019 high. The Sensex in India up 0.6%, and the Aussie market also up 0.6%. Brent crude rising on higher sentiment, up to $63 a barrel, and WTI sitting at $55 a barrel. Short-term crude oil looking strong, but medium and long-term still weak. US nat gas sitting at $2.29, really has been in the doldrums for quite some time now, and looking set to test this $2 level. The big move is in gold. Gold rocketing to a new 6-year high this morning, and we're seeing that moves here. We've been talking about gold rising for some time, and now it's breaking out. It's unwound these downside targets this morning. If we hold on to these gains today, it's highly significant. This is the breakout that we've been waiting a very long time for with gold, and it's now happening. Looking at silver, we're seeing here on the charts, we're also pushing much higher, of course, not making the 6-year high that gold is, but we are seeing quite big moves there. Taking a look at US 10-year yields, we're seeing here as well that they have really fallen quite heavily back to around the 2% mark, so quite significant there, and we even just touched below the 2% mark on the 10-year yield in the last 24 hours, but we're just holding 2% at the moment. And we've been saying that in the downside targets. We had 201 as a target, and that's roughly where we've gone to. So very significant that we're meeting those targets. Looking at the stocks themselves, if we start by looking at the Dow, We saw the United Healthcare Group were the best looking stock. Boeing on the downside, they're down 1.4%. They've really struggled. DuPont also falling lower. In the Nasdaq, we saw Adobe looking very strong, up 5%, pushing to new highs, new all-time highs there for Adobe, looking very strong indeed. We've got a 12% upside target. We've outperformed the Dow Jones by 14% this year so far. On the downside in the Nasdaq, we had NetEase. They were down 2.3%, so quite significant fall there. Looking at the Aussie market, we had Caltex there down 13%, really seeing big moves there. And on the upside, we had Resolute Mining, because that gold price really helping quite a lot of mining stocks. Resolute up 10%, Santa Barbara up 10% as well. So we're seeing quite big moves there. In India, we had India Bulls Housing. They're up 6.7%, not enough to really change the long-term picture on this chart. And Yes Bank up 5%. So again, not enough to really change the picture. On the downside, we had UPL Limited. They were down quite significantly, down 10%, and that's really bringing that run to an end. There was a massive week down, so we're seeing that falling away. Adani Ports also weaker, although they're still just holding their bullish position, and Wipro also weaker, but again just holding their bullish position. Have outperformed the market, but so far this year they're only outperforming the Dow by 2%. Taking a look at Europe now, and we start by looking at the FTSE 100. Fresnel, the best looking stock there. Again, mining, no big surprises there. BHP also looking very strong. On the downside, we've got Everaz, so it's not all roses for mining. And then if we look at the 250s, there's some very big moves here this morning. Dunelm up 6% on announcing that they expect profits to be higher. And if we look at Dixons, they're down massively this morning, down over 20%. So a real fall away there by Dixons Carphone Warehouse. Looking into Europe now, we've got Freshness in Germany. They're up 1.5%. Most European stocks up. We've only got a handful of stocks to the downside. Airbus being the one that's struggling a little bit this morning, down 0.7%, but still massively outperforming the Dow Jones this year by 27%, so it's looking pretty strong. That's it for today. The really big news is that jump on gold. It's new 6-year high. Gold is set to run much higher with multiple upside targets. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.